So, in a massive surprise to absolutely nobody, within minutes of the first Battlefield Labs playtest going live, it was already being streamed over on Twitch, and it wasn't taken down before somebody managed to grab an 11-minute video, which has now been doing the rounds on Twitter, Reddit, you name it. It's pretty much all over the internet. I'm sure a lot of you guys who are interested in this kind of thing have been looking for it, and you've already seen a lot of the gameplay footage. Needless to say, here on the channel, I'm not going to be showing you the actual gameplay because I don't want to get this video taken down by EA. Although part of me, as I said in the video yesterday, has to assume that EA knew this was going to happen, and they even did some things which were somewhat questionable. So I noticed them DMCAing these videos over on X, and then they would allow them to come back again. So two hypotheses here. Maybe A, there was just so many videos going up online they just decided to admit defeat and not even bother, or B, they started to see a positive sentiment around the game, positive feedback from what people were seeing in these leaks, and they thought, you know what, maybe we should just actually leave them be because it's good marketing for the game at the moment. In any case, just to be sure, I'm not going to post any of the actual gameplay here in this video, but I do have the 11-minute video, and I've been through it with a fine-tooth comb. I've written down all of the details, which I think really stand out, and since this is essentially just like out in the open, I think we should discuss it, what we've seen in those leaks, and what does the next Battlefield game actually look like. So without further ado, ladies and gents, if you enjoy the content on the channel, make sure to hit subscribe, leave a like down below if you enjoyed this video as well. Follow me over on X, there's always a bunch of stuff going up there as soon as I find out about it. And I also stream on Twitch from time to time, so all the links to that are down in the description below. So obviously it goes without saying here guys, but if you don't want any spoilers about the new game, you just want to wait until it releases, you don't want to hear anything, then there's going to be quite a lot of spoilers in this video, so fair warning. And obviously guys, this is just a test, right? So any features that we see in this test, these aren't all necessarily going to come in the game. The reason they're doing these tests is because they want to gather feedback. So if there is an overwhelming amount of negativity about any one of these features, DICE could well roll it back or change it. So I wouldn't just, take all of these features as like, this is going to be in the final game, but it certainly gives us a good direction of the way that they're going. So this playtest was on a single map called Abbasid, and it was a conquest map with 5 flags. It's the same map we've all seen from the previous little teaser of around 10 seconds and the concept art. Graphically, the game looks pretty decent. It obviously has a long way to go yet to be a finished product, and a lot of polish will be there, I'm sure, but actually I was pretty surprised with the level and the condition of the current pre-alpha. It looked very, very playable. Now, one of the major things that stood out to me was the sound design. The sound actually sounded pretty incredible. I would say it's most akin to Bad Company 2, and that is exactly what I wanted. So you could hear tanks rumbling in the distance, RPG shots going off. The gun sounds themselves, like the assault rifles especially, were very, very meaty, and they just echoed around the courtyards. That really just gave it this much more immersive factor than what we're used to in Battlefield 2042, so I think they're definitely onto something there. The UI looks a lot cleaner, way better than Battlefield 2042's. It's kind of like Battlefield 4, although it's pretty obvious that it is still a very placeholder, so it could easily change, but it was, rather rudimentary. You had your minimap in the bottom left as normal, and then your squad panel, and then down in the bottom right, you had all of your guns and your gadgets and whatnot. Now, the spawn screen has a much requested feature back. The squad spawn camera, or even the objective camera, has returned from Battlefield 4. So this is what it looks like in that game. You basically get a little rectangular cutout showing the camera of whichever squad mate you click on, or a 360-degree drone view rotating around an objective if you happen to click on that. Now, I believe the technical difficulties they had with the past few Battlefield games, and the reason they couldn't implement this, is because it just wouldn't mesh with the live view of the battlefield that they had in this game. It seems for this game, the new game, they have done away with that, and basically the spawn screen had blocked out 3D models of all of the buildings in the map, but none of them were textured yet. So I think we're not going to see the actual live view of the battlefield as we saw in Battlefield 1, Battlefield 5, and 2042, but we are now going to get this squad screen camera, which I think is far superior and way more useful. So there were 4 classes in this playtest: Assault, Engineer, Support, and Recon, and we got to have a look at 3 of them. So first of all here, the Support class has seen quite a lot of changes. So you get one inherent class gadget, and for the Support class, this was the Supply Crate. And the Supply Crate not only resupplies ammo and gadgets, but also heals you. Then they got an LMG, a sidearm, deployable cover, defibs, and a smoke grenade. So it looks here like they're pivoting the support class to be a LMG toting class, which is the one that has the heals. So the heals are not going to be on the assault class. And it's kind of funny because a few days ago I made a video all about what I wanted to see from the class system, and this pretty much is exactly what I outlined in that video, so super stoked to see that. Field specializations are back as well from previous games. So in this particular one here, the specialization for the support class was called Medic, and the 4 perks there were Medical Triage, Crate Heal Plus, Perimeter Defense, and then Active Medic. I can't really tell you what any of those do, but it looks like the more points you scored as a squad, the quicker those leveled up and the faster you would gain access to them. Then for the Engineer, this was very reminiscent of Battlefield 4, so the Engineers had PDWs in this test, he had an RPG, and then he had a brand new Russian mine called the PTKM-1R, and what this is a mine that you place down on the floor, and according to sources online, when a vehicle draws near, it shoots up into the air and then does a top-down attack on the vehicle, kind of like a javelin. The class gadget here was of course the repair tool, and then for the field specialization, he had perks called Dog Pile, no idea what that does, Mark Target, and then Thermite Drone. So it seems like some kind of drone is going to be in this game as well. Moving on to the Assault class, they of course had the Assault Rifles, and then for gadgets he had the M320 Grenade Launcher, the M320 Smoke Launcher, and then the MK141 Mod Zero Grenade, which is a stun grenade, and their class gear was the Med Pen, and then for the field specializations, they had Grenadier, Flak, Gadget Reload, and Heavy Flak. So one thing I am seeing here is a lot of the original names for equipment have come back. We're not going to have this silly naming scheme that we had in 2042 where, you know, the C4 was called C5 and everybody just got super confused about it, so that's really nice to see there as well. For the vehicles in this test, there was a main battle tank and a single IFV for each team, so that's pretty much as expected. This map is very much like Grand Bazaar. You've got 2 flags on either side and then 1 right in the middle there, so that's exactly the kind of vehicle spread I expected to see. We only saw this guy use the main battle tank. It seems to move a lot slower than it currently does in Battlefield 2042, but he really didn't get stuck in that much with it. You know, it was pretty much a normal main battle tank. You had the regular tank shell, and then as your secondary weapon, you had like an HMG, and then you had a gunner on top. Pretty much just a basic battle tank. Now, another big change is that it looks like attrition is actually coming back for vehicles. So I spotted multiple vehicle resupply stations dotted around the map, and they appear to work just like in Battlefield 5. You would roll up to one, a circle would sort of load up around the icon, and when it did, you would resupply and repair the vehicle. This is going to be a bit of a controversial one. I've never really been a massive fan of attrition. I feel like it kind of forces tanks to stay at the back of the, not at the front lines, but at the back lines rather, and just lob artillery shells onto an objective instead of really getting stuck in there. But he did get quite a few shells. I think he had like 20 shells to use there, so it's not that you're going to have to resupply that often. There were several points in this gameplay where it looked like there was a lot of suppression and specifically blurring around the edges of the screen. This guy seemed to be playing on a PlayStation 5. He was clearly using a PlayStation controller at least, and I'm not sure if the tests are cross-play or not, so maybe there is some amount of motion blur in there as well, but it certainly looked like whenever he got shot at, there was a decent amount of suppression and quite a lot of blurring going on. So we have potentially at least 2 factions in the game here. They have now been revealed to be, first of all, NATO, and then the faction that this guy was playing as the perspective from is called Pax Armata, and they seem to get Russian gear. So, for example, they had access to the RPG, they had access to that Russian mine that I spoke about earlier that shoots into the air and does a top-down attack. We've already heard leaks, I think, from Insider Gaming that these were going to be the 2 factions in the game. Are there going to be more factions like Battlefield 4? Are we going to see like the Chinese or something? Who knows? As expected, there was lots of destruction on display here with massive rubble drops, and at some point he actually drove a tank over a car and into the side of a building, at which point the entire facade fell down on him, and that looked pretty cool and immersive actually. I really liked that. And then I also saw footage of him RPGing a facade on a building and rubble dropping it on top of a tank, and that actually did damage to the tank as well. Another new feature is that there are now outlines around all of the capture areas. So at the moment, you know how it is when you get on a conquest flag, you don't really know where the edge of the zone is. Like if you get on this piece of cover, are you going to be on the zone? Are you going to be just outside of it? Now there is like a clear blue or a red outline around all of the objectives for you to see. There seems to be a lot of updates to the kill feed as well. You get a lot of achievements now, like Tank Buster or Headhunter if you get a headshot, and I believe it will show you like the best achievement you've gotten so far, like the longest range sniper or whatever. The kill notifications are now a lot closer to the middle of the screen, so it's pretty much just to the left off of your reticle, and you get a notification per bullet of how much damage you're doing. So instead of it being additive and just showing you the total damage you've done, every time you hit a single bullet, it kind of pops out to the side of the screen there saying exactly how much damage that one bullet did. The revive system in the game is going to be quite familiar. You get downed on the floor, you hold one button to give up or another button to wait for a revive, and then you've got nearby medics on the screen there as well. There is also a manage squad button that I noticed on the spawn screen, so that would lead me to believe that there is some sort of squad management already in the game, which is a good thing to see because in Battlefield 2042 we had to wait like how many months or even years for that to make it. There's a ping system in the game as well. I also saw that there was some 3D spotting. I'm not sure how intensive the 3D spotting is. Are you going to appear through walls? Like there were definitely Doritos above the heads of enemy players. I wasn't sure if they were going to disappear though, maybe as soon as you get behind cover. Also, assist counts as kill seems to be making a return. I noticed that in the kill feed at several points there, so this is an older Battlefield feature where if you would get an assist, instead of it just giving you an assist, you would actually get a kill. You guys will be happy to hear as well that you can now pick up class kits again. So not only do you pick up the primary weapon of the enemy soldier you slain, but you get the entire class kit, which is massive because if you're not playing, for example, as an engineer, sometimes it could be useful just to find an engineer kit laying around on the floor if you needed to tackle an enemy tank, for example. And then on the score screen here, you could see that both factions had a very different look to one another. In fact, one of them I would say is kind of like the Russian look from Battlefield 4, let's call it, and the other one looked very reminiscent, in fact, of Bad Company 2. In fact, it was strikingly similar. I think the big takeaway here, though, is that both of the factions look different enough that you should be easily able to identify that's an enemy, or that's an ally, which of course, with the current specialists in Battlefield 2042, it's nowhere near that easy. So there was some more sort of traditional Battlefield music playing with the familiar top scoring squad highlight thingy that we all know. You know, the top squad comes in and then it zips back to your squad and shows what you scored. And then there is also a traditional scoreboard here with score, kills, deaths, assists, and then objective points in that order. So again, good to see that that's going to be in the game from the get-go. Now, there were still quite a few things in this playtest which were placeholder from Battlefield 2042, and chief among them were a lot of the sounds. So I think the revive sounds, even some of the soldier callouts, it kind of sounded like Falk was still in there somewhere hidden in the game. This is pretty normal. We've already heard from David Serland when we saw the 10-second teaser, and people started to draw conclusions that it looked very much like Battlefield 2042. He's already said that they were using a lot of placeholder stuff from that game, so this is completely normal. Don't worry though, it's all going to get replaced in due time. Now, just as a final thought here, guys, I'm adding this in mid-editing, but I found this interesting post on Reddit, and this is actually a post from 10 months ago, and this particular person says that you can all choose to believe me or not, but I recently took part in a private playtest for, assumedly, either this Battlefield or the next one. It's looking seriously good, great gunplay, really solid gadget selection, good weapon pool, etc. It was alpha though, and I do mean hard alpha. And this guy goes on here to say that he played on 3 maps, Eastwood, Tungsten, and Abbasid. So we can now actually corroborate this guy's story because the map that they played in the test yesterday has been revealed to be Abbasid, so I think it's pretty clear that this guy did play on that particular map. And he also says that the Eastwood map was in the Hollywood Hills, which of course tells us that we're going to be going to the US. Now, a lot of the stuff he mentions here is going to be quite familiar in what I've just told you, but one of the major things he notes here is he says, the last thing of note from the test was that there were challenges, like daily challenges that they were testing, and in those challenges, I saw mentions of MP, which presumably stands for multiplayer, Portal, which would then indicate Portal 2.0, and regrettably, BR, which I really hope doesn't stand for Battle Royale. So that again really corroborates this rumour that the standalone product that Ripple Effect Games are working on is indeed going to be a Battle Royale mode. Me personally, I don't really care much for Battle Royale, so as long as it doesn't negatively affect, let's call it, the main game, then I don't really care, but I do think if they want to do this correctly, they need to make sure that the Battle Royale mode is actually free to play this time, unlike what they did with Firestorm. I guess one worry I have is that the same thing is going to happen to Battlefield that happened to Call of Duty, where Warzone came along, and it essentially stole the limelight, it stole the player base off of the main multiplayer game, and everybody just switched over and started playing Warzone instead. We also see this in Delta Force. There are way more people who play Operations than those who play the Warfare mode, like the Battlefield mode, so I really hope this isn't going to happen to Battlefield as well. But obviously, you know, take that with a pinch of salt just because this guy saw a challenge that said BR. Maybe it doesn't stand for Battle Royale. Maybe it's going to be some new interesting twist on a Battle Royale. I don't know, but I assume we're going to find out soon enough anyway. So, conclusion time then. What did I think of the game overall? Well, the past couple of days I've been talking about it being make or break time for DICE and EA, and I think the most important thing to get out of these playtests and these leaks is to see whether the game has any promise or not. And I think for me, I can unequivocally say that it definitely shows promise. It's far from being finished yet, and I am far from being completely sold on it yet until I get my hands on it and play it for myself and it's done and finished and it's, you know, doesn't turn out to be a buggy mess. But the first impression of this test basically puts the first impression that I had of Battlefield 2042 to shame. I remember the first beta test for the game, you know, jumping in, playing it super excitedly, and just thinking, what am I even playing here, dude? This is a completely unfinished mess. That is not the feeling that I get, at least from watching this gameplay of the new Battlefield game. It looks like it's on the right track. It's far from finished, like I say. It's got a long way to go, but assuming they're only releasing at the end of this year in October or November, or perhaps even the start of next year if they grow scared of GTA 6, then they might be onto something here. If you watch the footage for yourself, or just based on what I've outlined for you guys here in the video, let me know down in the comments what you thought about it. Do you feel sold on it yet? Do you need more time? Or maybe you didn't like what you saw? As always, make sure that you are subscribed to the channel to keep up to date with everything Battlefield, and I'll see you guys in the next video.